The romance at the heart of Virginia Woolf's second novel, Night and Day, gets off to a rather rocky start. Having just met Catherine Hilberry for the first time, Ralph Denham leaves her house party and tells himself, she'll do. Catherine Hilberry'll do. I take Catherine Hilberry. Having just selected her as his new feminine ideal, he then proceeds to reconstruct her in his mind. He makes her taller, darkens her hair, and grants her an exalted, infallible, independent mind. It's comical and not a little sobering. If we're honest with ourselves, we all have it within us to do the same kind of thing. Having refined our skill at remaking others in our imaginations back in grade school, every time we developed a crush on someone we barely knew. And so it continues as adults. We, with very little information at our fingertips, embellish those characteristics we really like, ignore those we don't, and sprinkle in a few choice traits for good measure, traits that we hope they possess. The human imagination has a wonderful capacity for invention, but it can easily veer off into fantasy land. This might be less troubling if we only played fast and loose with our understanding of folk we'll only ever know from a distance, like politicians, movie stars, and online influencers. The tendency to fabricate and alter details about another person, however, regularly informs relations with family and friends and makes it exceedingly easy to pigeonhole them. Proceeding under the assumption that we understand another person inside and out can give us a false sense of mastery over them. We can set limits on their potential or proceed as if they are infinitely capable. If we're in need of a scapegoat, we can demonize them by magnifying their faults and attributing any successes to luck or to outside intervention. If what we really want is an idol to emulate, to look up to, or to fantasize about, then we can fix them in place in our imaginations by taking one obvious desirable feature, like charisma, intelligence, strength, or beauty, and extrapolate outwards from that one feature and make the assumption that the presence of one trait must indicate the presence of all the other desirable traits. In effect, we can kill our capacity to roll with relational change. In just a few short years, maybe months, the person we love today will transform in ways we can't anticipate. No one is a static figure to be placed, depending on your current feelings, on a shelf, atop a pedestal, or in the deepest recesses of a trash can. As my family will tell you, sometimes affectionately, other times in a complaining tone, I adore photography. Like all of us, however, I have to be careful that my nostalgia for a moment in the past, a moment time often idealizes by stripping away all the messy moments surrounding that particular captured smile, does not become preferable to the living, breathing person in front of me. We are all dynamic, organic, constantly shifting individuals whose ongoing metamorphosis should remind us of the infinite capacity of a God who does not wait for us to arrive at any particular state before choosing to love us. If we hope to internalize the Apostle Paul's tenet that love always hopes and always perseveres, then we're going to have to ready ourselves for the changes that are inevitably going to accompany our beloved on their life journey. I'm Paul Marchbanks, and this is Digging in the Dirt with the 9th entry in a 10-part series I've entitled Beyond the Honeymoon, Romance 101. Today's talk is called Future Forward. Without hope, there's little reason to persevere. Why bother if there's nothing my efforts can possibly help bring about? The same goes for our beloved. The light that danced in their eyes in the early days of our relationship can fade quickly once they discover that 1, they don't have our support in their efforts to reach into the future and try something new. Or two, they notice our declining interest when the winds of change catch up to their minds and bodies. Let's consider the first type of change, that which we intentionally reach for. My beloved and I may have years ago begun our life together with certain shared assumptions about the way we would spend our free time, the kind of larger family we would one day form, and the professions we would like to pursue. What happens when a young couple with absolutely no interest in ever having kids has their vision of the future disrupted by later on, suddenly, one partner deciding that they really want to parent a young life? What happens when one partner who has been planning on becoming a family counselor decides that he needs 8 more years of higher education in order to become an English professor? That would be me. Or a partner with a BA in math and an MA in audiology decides that she wants to put aside both of those degrees and focus on creative writing. That would be my wife. Can our relationship expand and contract to accommodate such seismic shifts? When we find out that our partner has a newfound love for kayaking or miniature painting or hiking, water skiing, opera, is this a newfound opportunity for adventure? Or are we more likely to class it as an unneeded drain on limited resources we would better reserve for shared older goals we set years ago? How flexible is our relationship? Can it adapt? The Apostle Paul encourages the early church at Rome to, quote, not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. These days, the world's way of doing romance involves dropping someone once the relationship has run its course and the two of you are no longer in sync. God calls us to a different kind of love, a love willing to evolve with our ever-changing beloved. If we're committing to loving someone for the long haul, then our minds are going to need continual renewal and transformation just to keep pace with all the changes God orchestrates in their lives. And then there's the other type of change, the sort that creeps up on us with the passage of time. Back in the 80s, one summer, I remember during our annual visit to see my aging and widowed grandmother, who had stood by her man, as I later discovered, despite loving someone else, I watched a mini-series about a woman who was abandoned by her husband following a disabling accident. My grandmother's relationship with her husband, her lifelong fidelity, stood in stark contrast to this fictional fair-weather love which was too weak to withstand the pressures of life-changing circumstances. And it got me thinking rather early and seriously about that in sickness and in health part of the marriage pledge, which I had heard at a number of recent wedding ceremonies, and probably planted the seed for my work in disability studies years later as a PhD student. When you look at the intersections of romance and disability in Western literature and film, which is a reflection of our own culture, it can become very, very disheartening. When I think about the many films which I've watched which champion staying with it, sticking through to the end, despite illnesses and disabilities, I have to remember that there are also a number of other films which are reminding me that it is incredibly easy to just step out of a relationship when things get very difficult. I think we might benefit from returning to that old notion of pursuit, which many of us long ago discarded as childish or sexist. When you're an elementary school kid who doesn't understand your own feelings, affections might express themselves by chasing someone around the playground. In secondary school, the chase might involve writing love poetry. making mixtapes, if like me, you grew up in the 80s, and inserting yourself into the classrooms and extracurricular activities of the one you're hoping to catch. At some point, however, we realize that chasing after someone from a distance only feeds our fantasy. If we want an actual relationship, we're going to need to approach the other person directly. The thing is, even direct engagement can falter over time if we forget that our beloved is a unique, separate individual with changing needs who needs to be continually wooed. Pursuit need not involve objectification, like Sir Thomas Wyatt, the Renaissance poet, in his description of a woman as a hind or a deer who needs to be hunted and caught, or reducing someone to a mark kept on a scorecard for those who are intent on boasting of their conquests. Our beloved is not an insect to be pinned to a corkboard or a formula that once worked out is always going to yield the same reliable results as long as we insert into it the same quantifiable thing. For lifelong romance to thrive, we need to change as often as our beloved changes, persevering in our efforts to keep up with them because we have a shared hope for the future.